But I don't know how to say this, but I have to make the movie. I have to make the movie.
When I consider ideas for future content creation, if a project doesn't push the boundaries of what is possible, or at least accomplish something unique, I probably won't find it interesting enough to make. I've never considered myself a YouTuber or felt an obligation to post content on a regular schedule, and I hate the notion of adhering to any formulas. Rather, I'm always looking to put a twist on expectations, especially if it helps create the best derivative works that I can. This video is the story of Project Red Pants, which is the code name for a secret project I worked on between 2011 and 2015. It's the most ambitious idea I've ever come up with, and I never finished it. Red Pants is absolutely enormous, and unlike a typical video series which can be released in segments, no part of Red Pants can be published at all until the whole thing is complete. The reason for that will become clear very soon. But before I dive into the details of what Red Pants actually is, I have a lot of preliminary things to say about it first. So buckle up because this is going to be a long one. First and foremost, until this upload, I've kept the project so secret that I've never stated publicly what it even is, let alone how it was going, so consider this video to be the big reveal. However, this is not an announcement or anything because, truth be told, the prospects for this project are uncertain at best. I have entirely different reasons for why I need to talk about it now. The fact of the matter is that you will not understand the true story behind the ShadyParadox YouTube channel without knowing what Red Pants is and what happened to it. Which means up to this point, nobody besides me has ever known what's really going on. But now I've decided it's more important that my story is finally able to be heard than for this dormant project to remain a secret. I wish this reveal could be made under better circumstances. Ever since I came up with the idea for Red Pants, it has been my ultimate dream to one day be able to publish it. If I were level-headed, I would dismiss the project out of hand for being completely impractical to make. Not only due to the sheer volume of it, but also because it presents some obstacles that I currently have no idea how to overcome. So although it is my passion project and I did do significant work on it, there were still factors that ultimately caused it to stall out. Now, it is purely due to my enthusiasm for the project that I haven't officially canceled it. Even though I haven't worked on it in years, there's a part of me that's still hoping I get the chance to go back and complete it one day. Because this is the largest project I've ever worked on, it exhibits all the concepts I've expanded on in the ShadyParadox files dialed up to 11. In a way, everything in this series has been leading up to this moment. Many of the fundamentals I talked about in previous episodes I actually learned while working on Red Pants. So I hope you do watch the prior episodes first because this is where it all comes together. I would say there were two main reasons I kept the project secret for so long. The first reason is I didn't want to give it any sort of hype whatsoever. As excited as I was about it, I've always known there was a chance I was getting in over my head. There is nothing I hate more than to overpromise and underdeliver. With any project, I've always put my entire focus on the substance of my content and never on the marketing of it. I don't even like tailoring my thumbnails to generate clicks. I'd rather hide my best material in otherwise unassuming videos as a surprise. That has probably hurt my channel growth though. Anyway, the second reason I kept the project secret was that I didn't want anyone stealing my idea, so I'm kind of opening myself up here. However, anyone who tried now would still run into the same problems I have, so I don't think it's actually likely. Besides, posting this video creates a timestamp proving I came up with it first. So I'm claiming it for myself by posting this, and if you still steal it, you're just a bad person. Or if you really want to try something like it, at least pick a different game. So why have I changed my mind about telling everyone about it now? There are two reasons for that as well. The first one I already mentioned. The whole point of making the ShadyParadox files is so my viewers can finally be able to understand the real history of the channel. But the series would fall well short in its mission if it didn't explain Red Pants, so in a way I don't have a choice. The second reason is the uncertainty of the future of Red Pants. I don't know when or how likely I'll rev up the project again, but if or when I do, I'm going to need help from someone out there overcoming some of the challenges. So this is how it was going to be revealed one way or another. Alright, now we can start at the beginning. The idea for Red Pants came right after completing my Myst 3 Exile series. Although I was very happy with how that series turned out, I could tell I was just starting to grasp the potential of what gameplay commentary could truly accomplish. But in order for my next project to top it, I needed to make sure the game I built it around offered enough creative potential to do that. I talked about this in the previous video, when I used Curse of Monkey Island as an example of a good game that doesn't work. So rather than artificially restrict myself to the Myst series, I was willing to branch out from that if that's where the best idea was. One game that naturally came up among the options was King's Quest VI, which was the first adventure game I ever played and my favorite from my childhood. While it is true I had garnered my current audience playing Myst games, I figured a point-and-click adventure was close enough in style for there to be plenty of overlap in their following. Beyond my personal bias though, King's Quest VI also appealed to me as an objectively good candidate to build a project upon. Jane Jensen is a prolific and talented writer who filled every screen with a rich amount of narration and dialogue without going overboard. This meant there is so much detail hidden in the game that many players could potentially miss, so this would be the kind of thing I would have a chance to show off in a video series. But the layout of the game is what really presents some rare opportunities. The game takes place in a kingdom of 5 islands, each having a distinct culture influenced by a different mythology or other fiction. For most of the game, travel is open between the islands by way of a magic map that you carry around. This makes the game what I would best describe as pseudo-non-linear, because the events and tasks in the game do occur along a mostly linear timeline, but it manages to retain somewhat of an open-world feel. But its departure from a purely linear game is not entirely artificial either. There are in fact multiple solutions to a handful of the puzzles, some early encounters can change some of the later dialogue, and of course there are multiple endings to the game. As the Oracle would describe it about halfway into the game,
"Fate is not like the cut of a blade, young one, but rather like the myriad of paths formed when a hammer cracks ice. I will tell you what I can, but what will actually come to pass is up to you."
I've been saying since part 2 of this series that one of the major goals of my projects is to show as much of the game as I can as efficiently as I can. So ideally there would be some way to encapsulate this multi-threaded experience. Unfortunately, Let's Play series are linear, so if there's anything important that can only be presented outside the timeline of the playthrough, it's usually only displayed in a dry academic manner either through saved games or after the game is won. So instead I wanted to include these multiple threads more engagingly, but I could only think of one way to do it. And thus Project Red Pants was born. A non-linear commentary video collection of a King's Quest VI playthrough presented in a choose-your-own-adventure style format. This interactive twist is a game changer. It offers enormous potential for all sorts of new creative opportunities. As far as I know, nothing like this has ever been done, so this will take some time to explain. But the foundational premise is quite simple. It's mostly like any other series, but at the end of each normal video, some choices are presented to the viewer to decide what I should do next. The inspiration came in part from a feature YouTube offered at the time. Back in those days, YouTube gave the ability to add invisible buttons of any size that could link to other YouTube videos. And those buttons could appear at any timestamp and for any duration. Obviously this is an issue now because that feature has since been removed. I'll address this question later, so for now let's pretend I can still make buttons like this. King's Quest VI works extremely well for this format because it exhibits natural stopping points when traveling between the islands. In a normal series, my player character would be selecting the islands, which means I'd have to script out motivations for his choices. But now I don't have to do that because the viewer gets to decide that for me, injecting them directly into the playthrough effectively as a second player character. Giving the viewer this ability to influence the playthrough creates all kinds of scenarios that cannot exist in a traditional video series. For example, after the viewer selects an island, I as the character may try to figure out why they selected it. I might credit them if something goes well there, or blame them if it doesn't. Or maybe I just don't even want to be on that island at all. These dynamics simply aren't possible in a linear series that's completely under the control of the content creator. Of course, while the magic map may be the most common way choices will be made available, it certainly isn't the only one. The buttons don't even have to be arranged in an explicit choice pattern at all, nor do they necessarily have to be at the end of a video either. For example, another possibility is to place a button over the solution to a puzzle. I can use commentary to hint that it's there, but it will only be there a brief moment. So if it isn't clicked in time and the original video is allowed to continue, then my character will just fail the puzzle. Tricks like this allow me to show the game over sequences, and yet my character will never create or load any saved games. There are so many things about the project that I could try to describe to you in words, but there's only one way to paint the right picture in your mind. So here's an excerpt straight from the project itself. The first choice opens up at the beginning of the game, in which you choose where to go at the crossroads on the second screen. I'll play the video that shows what happens when you choose the village because it's pretty short. You'll also see where I'll place the buttons, but the plan for the final product would be to make them invisible, at least when they're not hovered over. I recorded this about a decade ago now, but I never made it public. Enjoy!
Let's see what the narrator has to say about each one.
To the left, a small village seems to invite the weary traveler.
That doesn't sound like a bad choice at all.
In the distance, a majestic castle shines in the sun.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the one making this decision. Take your time, choose wisely, and good luck. Okay, let's check out what's going on in the village.
Alexander is standing on a sunny village street. There are open shops to his right, a hard-packed path beneath his feet, and palm trees waving over his head. To the north, a key-shaped arch leads to another part of the village.
Oh, this is a quaint little town here. It has a distinct Arabian feel, and it looks like we've got...
Old lamps for new! Old lamps for new!
Well, I was in the middle of saying something, but now I don't even remember what it was. Oh well, guess I'll just look at the buildings.
The village buildings are made of rough sandstone stucco. This one has a shop on the street level and a private dwelling up above. Steps lead up to the shop door. The village buildings are made of rough sandstone stucco. This one houses a pawn shop at the street level and features rough wooden supports accenting the roofline. Steps lead up to the shop door.
Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. I was gonna say that it looks like we have several...
Old lamps for new!
Okay, this is gonna be a problem.
Old lamps for new!
What I've been trying to say is, it looks like we have several options to consider, but I don't want to go into this part of the village just yet.
The village continues to the north through a key-shaped arch.
So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to let you...
Old lamps for new!
I'm gonna show you guys a trick here.
Old lamps for new!
See, when you move the mouse to the top of the screen, it pauses the game. This is particularly helpful when the game is not letting you think straight. Hey, let's just swipe the merchandise. Maybe that'll get him to shut up.
Alexander will have to deal with the lamp seller if he wants to obtain one of those new lamps.
Oh no. The last thing I want is to listen to his whole sales pitch now. All I want is for you to go ahead and pick...
Old lamps
you know what?
for new! Old lamps for new!
Alright, what I was saying is, now it's time to make another decision. Just let me know whether you want me to go into the bookshop or the pawn shop. And please, be considerate and choose quickly.
Old lamps for new! Old lamps for new!
Yeah, good idea. That door is closer. We'll get off the street quicker.
Good day!
Now, if he starts repeating that line every few seconds, then I'm gonna be upset.
The pawn shop is a dimly lit place.
And it keeps going just like that. Now it's obvious why I can't release the project in segments. It wouldn't be right for any given video to be published without the video choices that follow it to be available at the same time. Now that you've seen a sample, let's zoom out and take a look at the design of the decision tree. For context, let's revisit the goals I laid out in part 2 of this series. You'll see how the Choose Your Own Adventure format provides an upgrade for these without settling for the unpleasant trade-offs I usually have to deal with in a linear format. I already touched on the first goal briefly earlier. Part of what inspired this project in the first place is the fact that some aspects of the game are multi-threaded and are therefore best displayed along multiple timelines. But you may wonder if that creates a problem for the tree structure. If each video leads to 2 more videos, and then those lead to 2 more and so on, then the threads could end up doing this and spiral out of control. Fortunately, this isn't Quest for Glory, so this isn't necessary to cover the game. Besides, I'm still the one playing, not the viewer, so there's no need to present a choice with every action, and it's fine for most choices to simply dead end. Conversely though, this isn't a simple quiz that looks like this, where only one path is right, everything else is wrong, and the ability to choose is just an illusion, as I've seen some choose-your-own-adventure projects do. This isn't multi-threaded at all, it's just a linear series with a guessing game laid on top of it. Instead, the choice tree will look more like this, in between the 2 extremes. This broadly resembles the double run format I talked about with Riven, but with a bit more flair. In fact, the reason I like the double run idea for Riven is that I already have experience working on a similar model with this project, and so I already know it works really well. A double run allows me to distribute the optional stuff in the game across multiple timelines. This way, each timeline will obtain a smoother flow since it won't be overly thorough, yet the project as a whole will be. The ideal structure for a choose-your-own-adventure tree also happens to be the ideal format for covering the events in King's Quest VI. That's the whole reason this is such an amazing idea in the first place. To keep the branches from getting out of hand, most junctures in this model will only have one correct choice. But a few choices will indeed split into multiple valid paths, giving the viewer some real influence over how the adventure goes. I also won't troll you with sets of choices that all draw dead. There will be at least one way to eventually get a winning ending from every juncture, even if it's not necessarily the best ending. There's also the matter of videos that exist outside any choice selection. I mentioned earlier how buttons could hover over solutions for timed puzzles, but other deaths aren't attached to any puzzle, such as wandering out into the ocean. My plan with these is to place a button that constantly hovers over the hazard every time I visit the screen they're on. So at random times, you can interrupt the playthrough and force me into that death from a whole slew of videos. Again, this avoids resorting to saved games. Here's what I say at the end of one of these death videos.
Well, that's it. Thanks for playing. So, how far did you get before you fell for this? To be honest, I'm not sure which one is worse. Either you failed before you could even really get started, or you went on a really long adventure only to end up drowning in the ocean for no reason.
The beautiful thing about this is that I, as both the creator and the character, truly have no idea what the answer to this question is, because you could have clicked it at almost any point in the game. So in some respects, this becomes your adventure more than it does mine. Now on to the next goal. This format also gives opportunities to expand on the character himself. The primary purpose of choice buttons is to direct the character's next action, sure. But the videos those buttons lead to can be written to give the choices a more dynamic impact than that. If the character exhibits different attitudes and behaviors in each video, the viewer will get a stronger sense they are in fact affecting the outcome. For example, perhaps in one scenario, rather than all wrong choices simply leading to dead ends, the same choice will present itself over and over until the viewer gets it right. Not only could this allow for a funny continuation for wrong choices, but it would also result in different reactions depending on whether the viewer solved it quickly or not. This kind of thing wouldn't be done often, but it is an option to deploy on rare occasion. Then the subject of consistency is probably the greatest asset this format has to offer. Normally I would have to make sure the entire project maintains a consistent theme. The diverging choices make that no longer necessary. Rather, there only needs to be consistency along any particular timeline, since each timeline represents a different version of the adventure. So any given video needs only to be consistent with the videos that lead up to it, and allow future videos that stem from it to be consistent with it as well. Meanwhile, this consistency along the timelines is best complemented by contrast across the timelines. This may sound like something I already covered, but it's not. Before I was talking about how different choices are covered within the same timeline. Now I'm talking about how the same part of the game is played out along different timelines. These multiple timelines will often be covering many of the same events in the game. That means I can present the same event in completely different ways in each. Maybe on one side I become stressed out over a given enemy or obstacle, while on the other I don't take it seriously at all and instead make fun of it. With opportunities like these, it's actually better to not maintain consistency throughout the whole thing. For example, in the village clip you just saw, the character grew to dislike the lamp seller. Sure, it's a fun bit of comedy in the moment, but that scene also serves a greater purpose, because it sets my character up to want to avoid dealing with him later in the series. But things would have gone differently had you chosen the castle. Once that version of the character circles back around to the village, he is more amenable to making a trade. So this gag comes with tangible in-game consequences as well. Contrasts across the timeline can result in different ways choices are presented too. Perhaps in one timeline I could get stuck on a puzzle and so the viewer must help me solve it, while on the other timeline I breeze right through it quickly on my own. So the branching decision tree improves everything across the board. It offers more game content, with broader character development on my end. You become a character yourself by directly engaging on your end, and the result is a different playthrough every time you watch it. Now you see why I've always preferred Project Red Pants over any other suggestions. This is where I fleshed out all the concepts regarding character consistency and so on, not during Real Mist, Exile, or Space Quest. I have much more experience and with more complex material than I've been letting on. So many things about this project fit together so well that at one point in the past I felt destined to complete it. Although there have always been logistics I never had fully worked out, I figured I could just start working on it and trust that solutions to various issues would emerge as the project moved along. Of course it was doomed. I forged ahead without a plan. In case you forgot, this is not merely a pitch for something I'd like to do in the future. Although I still fell way short because the project is so huge, I did do substantial work on it before it petered out in 2015. Since then, I've had almost 100 videos ready to go on my hard drive that no one else has ever seen. That's over 9 hours of content, much of which I like better than anything I've actually published. So as it stands today, Red Pants is already longer than any other project I've ever done, more complex than anything else I've ever done, in many ways better than anything else I've done, yet according to the internet I have absolutely nothing to show for it. Toward the end of my time working on it, all I was hearing was a growing chorus that my whole channel was dead. But I can't blame them. I didn't realize I was in too deep until it was too late. And it's not like I could defend myself even if I did explain the situation. I was still only about a third of the way done, and even worse, the reality of some fatal flaws in the project progressively became more apparent each day. These flaws were so fundamental they were like a crack in the building's foundation, and my hasty attempts to patch them only made things worse over time. These issues will sound familiar if you've watched earlier episodes of this series, but with a project as gigantic as this, they become more severe by an order of magnitude. The problem can be summed up by saying I put way too much work into the videos at the beginning. As you might guess, I was completing production on each video before working out sufficient details of the design on the later ones. It's like tightening the screws way too tight on one side of the desk without even so much as aligning the holes on the other side. I did this out of habit from working on my prior linear series, but this experience has taught me the hard way that this is not how to pursue anything larger than that. This meant that I was always wasting time reworking production on past videos. And it wasn't even helping, because I was opting for quick fixes, instead of a proper rework that would allow for the best design. One particular issue that was starting to catch up with me was the fact I wasn't handling Shamir very well. Shamir is a spy in the game that follows you around and appears in many different scenes. Any decent design would give special attention to this character as a focal point of the blueprint. The content I made for earlier encounters did not set up the later ones nearly as well as they should have. So as progress slowed down due to reworks and me just increasingly becoming discouraged, at the same time all I was seeing was that people were giving up on me. Maybe I should have told you about Red Pants right then, but it was in a bad spot, so I'm not sure that would have helped. Besides, everyone seemed so focused on Riven, I was afraid you'd consider anything else a disappointment no matter what merits it had. It's hard to produce any content when you're that disconnected from your audience, no matter how much you love what you're working on. Oh, and not to mention I had some personal issues at the time that were making life difficult too. It's painful to say, but all that combined led me down a depression tailspin that almost made me quit the channel entirely. The worst of it started in late 2013. I had been posting smaller video projects just to keep the channel active, but by 2014 I didn't work on much of anything at all. I tried to reboot the channel the year after that, but that didn't go well either. I confess, Red Pants was always the real project I cared about. Even Fly Mode and Space Quest were supposed to be just filler, although I'm not sure how well they fulfilled that purpose. But all that is now a distant memory, and yet Red Pants still remains my dream project. So could I possibly try again? Let's look at the problems the project currently has and what steps I would need to take to resolve them. It's a tall mountain to climb, but if it was at all possible to salvage this, the prize would be well worth it. Let's start with the issue I was just talking about. While I really enjoy much of the content in individual videos, the overall design I currently have has become quite a mess. So I would need to work it out a bit more before switching to production this time around. Specifically, I could start by making a better catalog of the game's internal resources, then map the script out more formally in the spreadsheet, instead of keeping as much in my head as I was. That means a lot of extra work will be front-loaded at the start, but it should work out much better long-term, which is the only thing that matters for a project that has to be published all at once anyway. Then, of course, the most glaring question is what to do about the fact YouTube's annotation system is now completely defunct. To be clear, this wasn't the reason Red Pants fell apart. I stopped working on the project long before the feature was removed. Still, it didn't surprise me. The writing was always on the wall, especially when YouTube decided not to port the feature over to mobile, then blamed the users somehow for its lack of usage. Anyway, this is the biggest issue because there's no way the project can ever see the light of day unless I find a solution to this. If all else fails, I guess I could make a simplified version with basic links at the end of each video. But without invisible buttons, I'd have to remove all the cool features like how I want to handle the deaths and timed puzzles. If I were reduced to this, I'd more likely just lose interest and rather not make such a thing at all. Another idea is to try to use the Annotations Restored browser extension, which I have gotten to bring annotations back on some older videos. But even if I knew it was capable of adding new annotations, which I don't, it's impossible to tell how reliable the extension will remain long-term. So I'm not going to commit the excessive amount of work this project requires if it's going to be dependent on something like this. Oh well, annotations were never that great for handling buttons on videos anyway, so let's entertain other solutions. Is it possible to program a custom video player to do it? If that's what it takes, how would I host the videos? Would I have to put them on my own website? Well, gee, if that's the case, then I might as well add the real features I want, like a login that would actually save your progress and offer a map with quick links to videos you've already unlocked. But there I go dreaming again. I don't know how to do any of this. So to make any version of Red Pants I'd actually care about, I would have to recruit some help from other people who may be able to get this working. They would have to be driven by nothing more than the same desire I have just to see the project all the way through to the end, because something like this has no revenue potential. So I would appreciate anyone willing to help out, but I apologize in advance that I cannot offer material compensation. And the last issue is something that also came up with the Space Quest project, which is that all the game's music needs to be recorded in a separate library beforehand. That way the game footage can be edited after the fact to fit the timing of the script. Finally, we have some good news here because I've already recorded the whole thing. I used it for a project I worked on earlier this year, which was a video showing all the ways you can lose in the game. I could have gotten through that project with just live recordings, but I opted to do the extra work up front and record the whole library right then and there. That way I could test it and see just how much easier it really made the video editing. And now I know, it really helps a lot. But that was a relatively small project in terms of video length, so the library's benefit hasn't paid for the cost of making it yet. I went with that option precisely so I'd be in position to hopefully dual-purpose the library for Red Pants someday. The library was not easy to record. I can't emphasize enough how significant it is to check this item off. And yet, the rest of this screen is still a really intimidating list that stands in the way of Red Pants ever becoming a reality. So I'm still going to have to face the music. Now it's time for me to compare all the major contributing factors and give an objective assessment for the true outlook for Project Red Pants. It's an intense battle between my head and my heart. Here I'll consider all the confounding factors, regardless of whether they paint as optimistic a picture as I would like. The novelty choose-your-own-adventure format has vast implications that pull heavily in both the positive and negative directions. But first and foremost, I am absolutely certain that if I were ever to complete Red Pants, it would constitute better content than anything else I could ever make. There are just too many opportunities presented here that don't exist anywhere else. As opposed to a linear series, the choose-your-own-adventure format offers optimal solutions for everything that makes good gaming content. It's the best way to present everything in the game, develop my player character, and engage the audience simultaneously. However, the most blatant issue is the fact I currently have no way to put buttons over videos like I used to. If I can't find a solution to this, then the project is dead on the spot. I'm not sure how pessimistic I should really be about this though. Although I don't know how to do it myself, it doesn't seem overly complicated. The technology must exist to make this happen somehow. Depending on what that solution is though, it may lead to even further logistical challenges, as I outlined in the last section. Even if I were to find a path forward, implementing everything would extend development time beyond what would already be required just for the videos. And that alone is going to be a huge commitment just by itself. The raw material would probably be about 3 to 5 times that of a typical linear series. All in all, even in the best case scenario, it's going to take a few years to make. That's because, just like with Space Quest, I'll pretty much have to start the project over at this point. Although I have lots of completed material on my hard drive, it's not stuff I can actually use. Production will have to be completely gutted to avoid continuity issues. Fortunately, a good portion of the design can be ported over, but other parts will need a clean makeover. But before we get too down, let's not label the project size as entirely negative either. After all, if I did get it done, you'd suddenly have an enormous amount of new material to watch, wouldn't you? And is watch even the right word to describe it? You'd get to do a bit more than that with this project. A number of people have told me they've watched the Real Mist and Exile series multiple times. So one of the main inspirations for this project was I wanted to create something that would give them a new experience each time they came back to it. So how do I base my decision on all this? Is Red Pants what my next project should be? Well, there's one more issue not listed yet, and unfortunately it makes it doubtful. The problem is not merely that it would take a long time, or even that the way to do it is unclear. It's the fact that this project cannot be released in segments. That means I'd basically have to disappear underground for an extended period of time once again. Have I really accomplished enough since returning to justify that? I did finish the Fly Mode series recently, which is a good start, but I don't think that's enough. That merely wrapped up a project I started a long time ago. What I need to do right now is start a simpler project from scratch and see it all the way through to the end first. Once I have 1 or 2 of those under my belt, then maybe I can devote the necessary time to make the ultimate gameplay commentary series. So the final verdict for Red Pants is that it's still on hold. But I refuse to call it dead. If I can overcome those logistical issues and generate enough enthusiasm from viewers when the time is right, I'd be eager to jump back into it. Completing Project Red Pants would provide a level of personal fulfillment that no other project could ever offer. I would die a happier man if this ever saw the light of day. And that, my friend, is the dream I dubbed Project Red Pants. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the whole thing. It means a lot to me since this project offers no real content for you at the moment. It was too important that I properly fill you in on this before working on anything else, because it's far easier to make content for an audience that knows the real story. If you've been around this channel a while, I hope this video changes your perspective on it, because there was always a lot more going on behind the scenes than I was willing to talk about. And this video closes a significant chapter in the history of the channel too, as I've now tied up all the loose ends from the past. Ideally, I would have finished all my open projects, but instead I used this series to explain what happened to the ones I couldn't. It's sad really that I've learned most of what I know about content creation from my failures. So now I need to convert that knowledge into some success or it'll all be a waste. With this video done, I can finally look ahead to the future. I've already addressed Riven, Space Quest, and now Project Red Pants as candidates, but as I've explained over the last 3 videos, none of them appeal to me as the best option to focus on exclusively in the immediate future. I really hope I can do Red Pants someday, but I should at least earn an easier feather in my cap first. In the next video, I'll pitch 3 completely new project ideas I've never discussed before, officially ushering in the next chapter of this channel. See you in Part 8.
Isn't it a rather bad business? taking old lamps and giving new lamps in exchange?
Well, there's always a chance that I'll find a genie. If I had a genie, I'd be richer than a king. Besides, there's always a roaring business in antique luminaries.
Is he serious?
How fare you, peddler?
And lad, have you an old lamp for me yet?
Well, if he's that dumb, then we should be able to just give him something from over here.
Alexander isn't interested in the gourd-shaped jugs. The battered chest does not interest Alexander. It's probably full of plain earthenware. Alexander is not in the market for pottery just now in his life.
Just take something, anything. There he goes.
Alexander examines the large pot. It's currently empty, but a few scraps in the bottom indicate that it is used as a dump site on occasion.
Perfect. Just climb in and jump out again, and the lamp seller will think he's found his genie.
Old lamps for new! Old lamps for new!
I will admit though, the lamp seller's call is rather inspiring. It kinda makes me want to yell at the empty street.
Hello? Is anyone here?
No one answers Alexander's shouted greeting. Perhaps he should find someone specific to talk to.
Hey look, there's someone specific.
The villagers bustle about their chores. They seem a busy, if somewhat subdued lot. The man seems busy with his chores and isn't interested in Alexander.
Hey wait, are those pants up there?
A pair of red pants has been hung out to dry in the warm glow of the sun.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna need a new pair of pants.
Alexander can't reach those pants. Besides, they probably wouldn't fit him, nor go with his green tunic.
Shut up, Negative Nancy. I'm gonna go get those pants.
Hello, I will be right up. Now, what can I do for you?
You can tell me where the stairs are, old man. I covet thy neighbor's trousers. Oh. Well, it appears that I cannot get back there by myself.